This morning is a truly historic morning in our school district. We are honored to have our second annual Hendry County School District Incubate Debate, District Debate Showdown. And I'd like to, first of all, thank our 24 participants that are going to be up here today debating on 3 different topics. Can we give it up to our 24 contestants today? They have put in a tremendous amount of hard work to prepare for the 20-minute roundtable series. And out of close to 1,800 students, because we did this across our secondary schools, out of 1,800 students, they're the top 24 district finalists. So that's something for them to be commended. I'd also like to thank our administrators and our teachers. If you're an administrator or teacher that helped with the debate initiative, could you please stand? If you're an administrator or a teacher. Can we give it up for our staff Thank you for your work, and thank you for embracing debate and the power of debate in the classroom. I'd also like to welcome this morning our 4 judges that we have here today. We have our Hendry County Commissioner, Mr. Raymond Iglesias, with us. We have our school board member, Mr. Paul Samberda. We also have state folks, you gotta pay attention. We also have our state board member from the State Department of Education, a board member all the way from Tallahassee, right? Mr. Daniel Fogenholy. We also have our school board member, Ms. Stephanie Busen, as our judge. Thank you to all 4 of you for your willingness to serve and for your time this morning. All right. We also have with us today the captain of the ship, Mr. Michael Swindle, our superintendent. Thank you for being here, Mr. Swindle, and for your leadership and for allowing us the opportunity to do this. So thank you very much, sir. All right. I also like to thank our LaBelle High School administration and staff for hosting us this morning. And we give it up for Principal Tammy Bass and her team as well. All right. I'd also like to remind, we have the honor of having with us the entire freshman class here at LaBelle High School. And this is a special freshman class because you guys are truly a record-setting group of LaBelle High School students. You guys outperformed the state in terms of your ELA on the PM2, and we're glad that we have the 9th grade here with us, our record-setting historic 9th grade freshman academy class of LaBelle High School with us. So let's welcome them as well. And I want to remind all our scholars this morning, this is a very civil occasion. And we expect nothing but your respect and professionalism. I heard great things about the school level and your behavior, and we expect the same thing this morning. So thank you in advance for that. All right. I'd also like to welcome this morning to the stage a man who made this partnership and this initiative possible. We met about 1.5 years ago, and ever since then, we have been nothing but grateful for the collaboration and the partnership and all their help in bringing debate to classrooms across our entire school district. Can you please welcome to the stage Mr. James Fishback.
Well, good morning. Debate is hard. It's not supposed to be easy. It's not supposed to be easy to have to research topics from NATO to the American Revolution to World War II, to ponder the question Machiavelli asked us in The Prince whether or not it's better to be feared or loved. Debate is hard, Mr. Swindle, but the students of Hendry County, all 1,800 of them, rose to the occasion. Give yourselves a round of applause. I started Incubate Debate in 2019 because when I graduated high school in 2013, I was on the debate team. Debate changed my life. I had a stutter. I wasn't as confident coming up on stages like this and talking to folks, but I had a passion, like so many of you do, for what's happening in our country. And what I found with Incubate Debate is that we weren't just trying to incubate, Mr. Jewett, the debate teams. We've done a great job of that partnership with coaches like you, but we were trying to bring debate to every middle and high school student in the classroom, to infuse debate into the everyday curriculum. So you finish a lesson on American history, have a debate about it. You finish a lesson in English, you can have a debate about the different perspectives you just contemplated. And so this partnership with Hendry County is the first of its kind, and it's going to be a blueprint for what Incubate Debate is going to do across this great state of Florida and across this great nation. Mr. Swindle, Mr. Sanchez, thank you very much. It is an honor to be here. And as we say at Incubate, may the best argument win. Thank you very much. I'm now going to introduce the Incubate Debate coach here from LaBelle High School, a good friend, sending two of your students to Incubate Nationals, Mr. Seth Jewett.
Good morning, LaBelle High School. How y'all doing? Great to see all of you. Thanks to everyone who made it out, especially if you traveled. Parents, teachers, students, everybody. I'm so thrilled to have you all here. All right, so how about we get the show started, huh? We are going to have a series of debates here this morning. There will be 3 total debates. Pardon me, I'm just grabbing my notes. We are going to start with the middle school world history debate. They will be discussing the question, is it better for a leader to be feared or loved? Please come to the stage representing LaBelle Middle School. I need Arlie Reyes, Juan Jose Parra, Kari Keeling, Adriana Flores. Come on up, guys. Give them a hand. Huh? Come on up, guys. LaBelle High School, if you would take your seats to my right, these four seats right here. For Clewiston Middle School, if I could please have Jamie Addison, Brunette Bogle, Ty Davis, and Carmelo Ward. Come on up, guys. Give them a hand. They traveled real far here to compete in the arena. Guys, if you would grab a seat right here to the right. Check. Okay, guys, real quick. So, the way that this is going to work, the students from LaBelle Middle School will be defending that it is better for a leader to be feared. All right? To be feared. Clewiston, you will take the other side, where you will be arguing that it is better for a leader to be loved. You guys got it? The debate will last 20 minutes. Kindly remember the rules of roundtable debate. No notes. No standing up, and the golden rule, treat each other right. Sound good? One bit of business, we have 2 microphones, so I hope you guys learned how to share, okay? So I'll hand one microphone over to the LaBelle side, and the other side over to the Clewiston. I expect you guys to work that out as we go. But you'll have 20 minutes. Okay, guys. Oh. Should probably get a stopwatch, right? Okay. Okay, guys, it'll be 20 minutes on my mark. On my mark. Ready, set, go.
Hello everyone, welcome to the 2025 Clewiston Middle 6th grade, welcome to the middle school debate, incubate and debate. My name is Ty Davis and I would like to express why it is better for a leader to be loved rather than feared. Love installs a sense of if you want to work for that person. Most of the country comes from labor, and most of the country's money comes from labor. Most of that is from work, and if you have a loved leader, that will help someone want to work.
Hello everyone, good morning. So we're going to debate and show how it's better for a leader to be feared, it's more effective for the leader in his community to be overall more productive.
This is true because, for example, a feared leader would have more authority to make his people work, and the country would be more, it would run more smoothly. There is no if, ands, or buts. They are a machine. They run smoothly.
But wouldn't a feared leader have more rebellions against him?
I think a feared leader would not, because, for example, Castro was a feared leader, but his people did not rebel against him because there were consequences. He put his foot down if there was any rebellion or anything like that.
Just to add on what you said, with fear comes fear of repercussion. So being scared of a leader, it wouldn't really change the authority, would it? Because it's scared of being harmed or anything like that.
Okay, but we all know love is a very, very big action word. So we all know the definition of action. You have to show it. You have to show that you love someone. So everybody would love to be loved by their family and their friends. So if you want to receive love, you have to show it, right? So if a leader shows love to their people, wouldn't you think their people want to show it back to them if they ever are in harm or if they ever need help?
Yes, that may be true, but they really don't need love to resurrect, to be a feared leader. Because if they're a feared leader, then the people will be more loyal, they'll do more commands than they're supposed to.
Piggybacking off of what Renee said, take for example, Julius Caesar. He was assassinated by one of his close friends and his stepson, Marcus Junius Brutus. Does that not go to show that why they assassinated him was because they were afraid of what he would become?
Okay, well, I know we're on that topic, but I would like to add something more. And basically, if we want a leader to be loved, then the people will show work and they will be more lacking off. We want more work instead of lacking it off. We want to get more respect so we can work for each other, right? And basically, like Hitler, people worked for him because they knew there was going to be consequences, and people were feared of him because he killed 6 million Jews, and no one wants to get killed next.
Okay, but they had no choice. They had to keep going. They couldn't stop because he kept forcing them. He kept threatening them. So if you're making your community keep working for you because you're threatening them to kill them, wouldn't you think that would be wrong? Do they ever feel tired? Don't you think that? Wouldn't you want to look after your people, not making them feel down and tired, not being able to work for you anymore?
Well, yeah, but it's not about what they want, it's about how effective a country is, right? So if an effective country is ran by a leader that has control and has authority over the people, because if they don't have respect for them, they don't fear them, and they just don't listen to them, it's gonna fail as a community.
For example, Kim Jong-un and his father, Kim Jong, they ruled for a long, long time. Their family was extended. So feared leaders, they have a longer lifespan. They last longer overall.
But what about when you're feared? Wouldn't you want your followers to share ideas, concerns, and feedback with you?
Yes, but longer. Like for example, Abraham Lincoln, he was assassinated because he helped he helped contribute to stop slaves and he was like a love leader. So love leaders shorten their life, and then fear leaders they live on.
I understand what you're saying, but one of a great loved leader was George Washington. George Washington was so loved that he won by a unanimous vote. That means no one else other voted for the other person. That just goes to show that when you are loved, you are really loved. So that means that people want to work for you. People want to have a relationship with you. And if there's one thing in a community that you need a relationship with someone so that you can feel comfortable around something.
Being a love leader also inspires loyalty and trust. This helps when creating friendships and not choosing the wrong people to be around.
Well, I don't think that's true at all because you said it causes loyalty, but some of the most loved leaders, John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, they were really loved and they were assassinated by their own people. When you see people like Adolf Hitler, he killed himself, but because of other countries that were against him, not his people they still listen to him. So when leaders love, they love, but their own people are more likely to kill them. So it's better to be feared, it's safer to be feared as a leader.
Okay, but I want to agree on what Carmelo said. He said having a collaborative communication with your leader is a good idea because you're able to have a connection with them. Just like you stated, Martin Luther King Jr., he got assassinated by his own people, but that's because people didn't agree on what he said. Some people are going to be haters, some people are going to go and follow after you. A leader is someone that people look up to, not someone they just look at and brush off.
That is true, though. If somebody's assassinated, that's not only that they're loved, that's that they're feared by somebody. If they're assassinated, somebody wanted them out. They were scared of what their ideologies were. There's no question about that.
Following off of Brunette, I agree with what she said because wouldn't you think a leader who is loved, would their followers be more likely to take risks for their leader?
Okay, back to what Joshua was saying about how a leader will, if they're feared, their country will more last. It will more last because people are most likely to work longer. Loved people aren't going to work longer because they think that they can just slack off.
Going with what y'all said about Adolf Hitler and what she is saying. There were many assassination attempts on Adolf Hitler, but they were not successful, which led to him rising to power, which Adolf Hitler was a bad person because he was feared and they made him do all that work. Once, during 1944 through 45, the Germans started to realize, what they were doing was not okay. But they were brainwashed by Adolf Hitler thinking that it was okay.
Well, that just means he was an effective leader. If he can, you say brainwash, but he convinces people. And remember, at one point, he started out small, with a small group of people that shared his beliefs. He grew with power because people trusted him. People believed in him. That's when he grew to a position where he eventually took control of all of Germany's military and conquered many lands. So he was a bad person, yeah. But as a leader, looking at it from a leader, he conquered many places and his people believed in him. So as a leader, he was very effective.
Adolf Hitler, he forcibly and physically took what he wanted and gained his respect. But it wasn't respect, it was fear of what he would do to them, the consequences of their actions. And that's why no one rebelled against him. And he was so scared and he didn't want to go to jail that he killed himself. And love leaders, according to Champlain College, MLK, he was inspired by non-violent people. And he used this to have a social change through non-violence.
was his own decision. I don't think Martin Luther King wanted to die, did he? That was not a long reign at all. Hitler, though his cause was not the greatest, he did what he thought was best for his people, and he led them to success in his eyes. Martin Luther King, he did not finish. He did not. Love leaders do not have the time, or they don't have the ability to finish, because lots of them were assassinated. Martin Luther King, Lincoln, and other presidents.
But what about people like Julius Caesar? He was like, his assassination led to because his followers didn't know what he would do next, right?
Yes, but as what Tiffany was saying, they were assassinated because they weren't finished and people were against it, so they were kind of feared at the same time.
Okay, but some fear leaders, they have been assassinated by their community because they were being treated with fear, and their community didn't like the way they were being treated by their leader.
People show love to the leader so they don't get killed. So love can be pretend. It doesn't all have to be real. Love doesn't all have to show how much or one leader. They are loved because they are feared that they will get killed. And so love can sometimes be pretend. They can be pretend, or they don't show the same. They show the same respect because again they are scared of being killed. And like I said, love can be pretend because they are not gonna get. They want to give them respect so they can get the respect back.
I understand what you're saying, but there's one person that did not pretend to love, and that is Mandela. Mandela served 25 years in prison, and they did unbearable things to him. But he still forgave. When he rose to power, he could have took out the whole country, but he forgave them. That is to show that he is a loved leader.
He forgave them, so he didn't rule. He was in prison because they weren't afraid of him. Now, if he was a fear leader, he wouldn't have been in prison, he wouldn't have gone through all that, he would have taken control. Which is, I mean, if his ideas were pure, like you say, then it would have been good if he taken control, wouldn't it? But he didn't because he was a fear. He didn't have the power, and some people would say the will strength to be feared. Some people just aren't strong enough to put themselves in a position to be feared, to have control over things like a leader should. So if a leader can't do that, they're just not an effective and good leader. That's why they're not the best. Otherwise, leaders that are feared, they rule for much longer, and they conquer many things, and they bring their people much wealth and everything, because they're effective leaders.
Well, not always. Love leaders sometimes do serve longer. Take, for example, Franklin D. Roosevelt. He was the only president to serve 4 terms, but he could have served longer, just he died in office.
That's true, but I disagree that fear leaders, they last longer. Kim Jong-un and his dad, they served for generations. Their country was maintained and it was stable. It still, to this day, is stable by their family.
Okay, but just like your parents, you love your parents. You never ever feel fear of them, only if you're getting disciplined by them, right?
To some extent, your parents have to have authority, otherwise your household is not effective. Otherwise, nothing gets done.
When you are a fear leader, the people that love you, they love from fear. They don't really love you deep inside their heart because they are afraid what you will do to them from the rebellions that you can do. And Martin Luther King, he was assassinated because of the thoughts he had that were very powerful that can make a social change.
Yes, but as I said, people that are leaders, their people are more loyal or more responsible for the things they do after and they live long enough to do.
But right, a true leader's strength lies not in inspiring fear, but in cultivating genuine love and for their followers to thrive and contribute their best in supporting a safe environment for the followers.
Well, I disagree because we need discipline to be able to show the kids that what will happen if you do something bad. Because if we don't show discipline, they'll think everything's okay.
discipline is a very well thing. But there's some studies have shown that not just discipline can lead to it. Say, if you do something good, you can get a reward from that. In discipline, if you do something bad, you can get a punishment. But if you do something good, you can get a reward, which will help you understand what to do good and fear that something else good will happen to you.
I totally agree with that. Like Fidel Castro, he had that exact reward system. He was a feared leader. His reward system was, if you did good things, he gave you food, and if you did bad things, you were in prison. That's exactly what you just felt like that.
Well, fear leaders, they lead out of anger. They lead out of anger and hatred. Like Adolf Hitler, he led against hatred of the Jews. That's why so many were killed.
Well, I completely disagree with that. Yeah, that was the way Adolf Hitler thought, but he had passion. He had passion for what he thought. And it wasn't hate, it was like what he thought was right and wrong. Yeah, when we look at it, his morals were right, but to him, he had passion for that. To him, that was right, and to him, that was wrong. And that was him as a leader. It wasn't hate, that was just the way he thought. It's not, when a person is feared, it's not always hate. You just have more authority, you're just more controlling. But it's not passion, it's not thoughts, it's not feelings of how things work, and it should be.
Well, when a leader is feared, it can affect the ones that are close to you and their ruin relationships. This is why Julius Caesar was killed by his own stepson.
Yes, I would like to add on to Carlos stuff. As he said, like,
Well, you said that the leaders have authority, right? Well, and that you can't have a relationship with them. But clearly, many people out here their parents have authority over them. But you still say that you don't have a relationship with them. Do you? Even if they are for you.
One historical example of a great leader that I said earlier was George Washington. George Washington, y'all were saying how a loved leader or a feared leader can rule for longer, but George Washington didn't want to. He chose to go out of office on his second year, and that's part of how he was known as such a great president.
Yeah, but that was the first American president, right? And from him, we've had many presidents. Today, you would never see a president from today. Like people want them to do another term. And that was rare. That was one in a million, because it was him and one of the presidents from all of them. But now when they're feared, it's more common. Castro ruled for much more. Adolf Hitler ruled for much more. Stalin, he also ruled for much more. So the pattern of a leader ruling for a long period of time is a lot more common in the fear section of leaders than the loved ones. When they're loved, they usually fall in a pattern. They're either assassinated early or they're ruled for a very little amount of time.
Okay, so since we're on the topic of presidents, when you vote for your president, you pick the one that you think is going to treat you the right way and treat your country the right way, not the one that's going to put you in fear and trouble where you're going to have to leave your state or your country. You pick your president on who you think will treat the community and your people best, right?
Can I get more proof of that?
Give me your definition of proof.
My definition of proof is that I want to hear more about it.
Like, what I'm trying to say is, when you vote for your president, you pick the one that does the best for you, who you think is going to treat your country the right way, not the wrong way.
yeah, but Donald Trump, for example, right now he's telling Hispanics to leave out the state, and people never knew about that. So now people are kind of getting feared of him because he's telling people to say something.
And that'll have to be the last word. That's time. on, nice and loud. Give him a hand, give him a hand. Well done. Feel free to stand up, guys. Take a bow real quick. All right, if you guys wouldn't mind taking your seats. Let me have that second microphone there. Thank you so much, gentlemen. All right, guys, how about that? Fantastic stuff, fantastic stuff. You love the passion, you love the passion. All right. Next debate, coming right up. One moment, I lost my notes here. I apologize. All right, we're now going to do the middle school American history debate. Here's the question, guys. Was the American Revolution, y'all heard of that, right? The American Revolution driven more by economic grievance or ideological principles? Representing LaBelle Middle School, I need to see Carlos Gomez, Christian Hansen, Joshua Suarez, and Adriano Romero. Come on up to the front, guys. For Clewiston, I need to see Angela De Santiago, Ariana Henry, Jemiah Ruiz, and Caden Vasquez. Come on up, guys. Clewiston, if you would please take your seats to my left. LaBelle, if you would please take your seats to my right. Go ahead and sit down, guys. So, once again, was the American Revolution driven more by economic grievances or ideological principles? LaBelle, you will be arguing that it was primarily economic considerations, that it was economic grievance. Clewiston, that means you guys will be defending whether or not it was ideological principles. Everybody understand? All right, so guys, you got 20 minutes. Remember the 3 rules. No standing, no notes, golden rule. You got 20 minutes, have a great time. On my mark, okay? So one moment. Ready, set, go.
Good morning, my name is Angela De Santiago from the CMS 8th grade class. Before we actually start this debate, I want everyone in the audience and here on stage to think why the American Revolution started. Those colonists that were in our original 13 colonies were in the end better off than those Englishmen in England and Wales itself. So why did this revolution start? I believe that both of those things are intertwined, but I also believe that the American Revolution was based more on ideological principles.
So I agree on what he said, right? That of course the 13 colonies would be way better without the English managing them. But I think it's the economy most of all, because let's see. So first of all, so the king that was ruling Great Britain, he put a tax on tea, right? And the 13 colonies, right? People who managed the 13 colonies were very mad about this because they couldn't afford tea anymore. So this caused them to this caused them to become angry, and they started throwing tea and an event called the Boston Tea Party.
Good morning. My name is Ariana Henry, and while I do agree with what you said, it did start off because of the British being in debt. But you have to think about it. Before the Revolutionary War started, or before they were ever in debt, or before the French and Indian War, they were prosperous. They had everything that they could want. British colonists were paying their taxes, so they've never really been taxed before, and they were already technically self-governed. So if you randomly had all of these acts, all of these laws randomly thrown at you, how would you feel?
Well, I do agree with that, but during the French and Indian War, they were taxed with no consent whatsoever. They were taxed without representation. They really wanted that, and they had gotten angry about that. So I think that would be a primary cause of the Revolutionary War.
I like to talk about when you said they were taxed. They were taxed without no one who was able to talk about them, which was a new. They wanted someone in office for them in England, and that was a new idea because they never had that. So they wanted to move up from a monarchy, and they wanted to be able to vote for what they had and vote for what happened, vote for their taxes.
Hello, my name is Shemaya Lewis, and I agree with what he's saying. The reason why they got mad about with the taxation, with that representation, they felt like they had a right to like agree whether they should be taxed higher on these stuff, and they felt like that their government should make that decision and not the British monarchy.
So I do understand that you guys are trying to tell me that it's because of the ideas about how the British colony they implemented these laws and acts which angered the people, right? That's part of the ideological experience, right? So, and what I think about why it's economy is mostly because of the fact that tax is part of the economy, right? And most of these laws were related to taxes, right? And that's because the French and Indian War, when it occurred, the British colonies, they needed more money, right? They were running out of money, right? So they gave them laws that had them to pay taxes, they had to pay taxes, right? And that's part of the economy.
I would like to kind of backtrack on what you said about the Boston Tea Party. The Tea Act was in agreement with the Townshend Acts. Yes, the other acts were repealed, but those acts were made without representation for the colonists in Britain. Those acts went against their ideals of self-governance and representation in the government. They were,
So what she was trying to say, they went for more money and then they threw off. So the colonists were angry that they were taxing more for the tea. So they snuck on the ship and threw off the tea for a rebellion because they were angry. They didn't want tea to cost more for them.
I understand what you were saying, but why did they throw the tea off of the ship? Because of their ideals that, hey, we shouldn't be taxed without representation. They did that simply because they felt like the government was going against them and it wasn't with them. When you are in office for the government, the people.
I would like to agree with what Ms. Henry said, and as I said about self-governance earlier. These acts very much went against their ideals of self-governance because they also made self-governing communities, such as the Virginian House of Burgesses. There was many famous people many historical figures in that house like Patrick Henry, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington. That self-government was made with separation of powers, consent of the governed. And all these taxes that Great Britain was putting on the colonists went against those specific ideals.
Well, yes, but let's go back to the fact that, so there's acts and laws, right? But let's say, for example, the Townshend Act that forced the colonies to have military officers and stuff like that in their houses without permission, right? So that technically violated their own properties, right? That they paid for, right? This made them mad, but it was because of the economy, because of their money, right? They paid for that property, right? So of course they're gonna get mad that some random people are living in their houses.
I would like to add on to what you said about that random people living in their houses. Do you know that in England, that the people of Great Britain were actually paying for their taxes were paying for the new colony before the Indian Revolution there? And, you know, after all that, and when we started revolting, the Great Britain was actually, they were with us about separating because of the ideal of us leaving, because they were paying for us, and they wanted us to separate from them, and it wasn't just America trying to separate, it was Great Britain, the people of Great Britain, it was just the king trying to hold on.
I would like to add on to what Mr. Vasquez said about England also wanting to separate. That is very much true because 20 to 25% per British citizen in England, those 20 to 25% of taxes went towards paying for the colonies. And as I said earlier about why this revolution happened, the colonists were better off. In England, citizens earned about 42.30 pounds sterling, and colonists earned 46.50.
Yes, I would agree with that, but about the whole French and Indian War, they weren't used to these taxes. So they, like you guys have said before, they were angry, but later on they kept rebelling against them, and then that kept adding on more.
I would like to bring up mercantilism and the salutary neglect. So, as you know, mercantilism is basically when you are only supposed to be trading with your mother country, and salutary neglect is when acts or laws are really enforced correctly, or you aren't really being told to do it. And they weren't, it was a time during this where they were going through that. And of course they weren't used to that, but you can't forget that if I were to just randomly throw rules at you randomly, that you wouldn't be mad.
Now, I agree with what she's saying. They're mad about the taxes because they're not used to it. And why are they not used to it? Because the British monarchy government, they never gave them that treatment. And then also suddenly they give it to them. So they're gonna be mad because they felt like they had got some of their freedom taken away. And how would you feel? You were so used to a specific sort of lifestyle, and then suddenly it gets taken away suddenly. How would you feel about that?
Well, I really don't feel like it would be that hard because we went from not having stuff to like getting all these other rules. So it's basically people are trying to put rules on us. We have to follow these rules. These rules are put there to be followed. They're not there just to not follow them. But they didn't follow those rules because of some of the stuff that was happening in there.
I understand where you're coming from, but I also want to add on to what Ms. Henry and Ms. Ruiz said. Ms. Henry about the Navigation Act and mercantilism, and Ms. Ruiz with how the colonists were angry. It's like history is kind of repeating itself. The mercantilism put trade restrictions on the colonists from where they could not buy tea and other imported goods. It's like nowadays with Donald Trump and imposing 10% tariffs. Wouldn't your parents be mad about those taxes too? It's raising the prices of almost everything. That's how the colonists felt. And those tariffs and like those acts, they're like violating our rights of consent of the government.
Yeah, for violating all of the rights, but you still gotta understand that they couldn't buy tea from certain places. That's why they got their tea taken off. That's why all their tea got spilled off the ship. So what I'm trying to say is like they had to go and buy more tea from different places just because they couldn't buy it from a certain place that wasn't right for them.
I would like to go back on what you said about what you didn't think that it would be that hard, but I don't think it was about following the laws. It was more about having the choice to choose whether or to vote whether this act or this law should be in place. If you just had something thrown at you and you never got to vote on it, you never had a say on it, you would be pretty mad too.
I would also like to add on to what Ms. Henry said. The Boston Tea Party has been coming up a lot, but we also have to think about the Boston Massacre. That's when everything changed from economic grievances to ideology. The Boston Massacre was when colonists were provoking the British soldiers with snowballs, and the British soldiers fired back. Mr. John Adams decided to defend these soldiers in court because of his ideals of patriotism.
So you're right that the Boston Massacre was because of ideological principles, right? But let's go back to taxes too. So first of all, the British, they needed these taxes to pay for their own mistakes. So the 13 colonies was also part of the British at this time. So they were also like kind of British, right? But they couldn't handle being led by a tyrant king, right? That wanted them to pay for their mistakes, the mistakes that the king made, not them, right? So because of this, taxes are part of the economy, right? So they wanted to separate from the British.
I like to add on to what you said when they said they didn't want to be ruled by a tyrant king. That's why Thomas Paine had made common sense to show the colony that we shouldn't be controlled by a king across the Atlantic Ocean that's never here, that don't really control us, that's just making us pay for their taxes, that they started a war, so we were trying to break apart. Money was a big problem, but the ideal and the was what really pushed them into the war.
I would like to add on to what Mr. Vasquez said and what you said. The colonies and the colonists did not want to be controlled by a tyrant king. That's why they made their self-governing communities, like the Virginia House of Burgesses, the Mayflower Compact. All of those were their self-governing communities. The crown never stepped in until they started imposing all these taxes.
I would also like to add on, way before the colonies and the colonists had already started to self-govern. Like in many churches, they started to rebel against the leaders that they thought were overpowering them. But let's not also forget, this is mostly about the ideology, because if you're sending letters to the king, if you're constantly reaching out to get an answer or to get a reason for why this is happening and you're not getting any response, then of course it's going to cause a lot of tension.
So you write ideological principles because mostly they were affected by the fact that all of these bad stuff that the king were throwing at them, like the laws, the acts, everything, right? But so technically they all went in an uproar, right? Which is called the American Revolution, which was when they separated from the British fully, right? But they mostly needed money to do this, because without the money, then where would they get the military, the army, right, to fight back from the ideological principles that the king had set onto them?
Well, wouldn't you think? Now, I know, I hear what you're saying, they provided the money, but wouldn't it make sense to rule yourself, not be ruled by a government that's across the sea, that never really interacts with you except giving you money? Like, it's just, it just doesn't make sense. Why would you want to be ruled by a government that does not really interact with you? They can't really send messages to you because it takes a long time. They could be dealing with the problem, but it would be too late if you get responded by it late.
And like you said about, well, like she mentioned, also with the Navigation Act, wouldn't it make more sense if the colonists could branch out and send their goods to other countries? Wouldn't that make more profit?
Yes, it would, but I would like to bring back the French and Indian War. During that, the Americans, they're taxed. So they were to basically pay off the debt of the British, and as you said before, they would be mad since they're not used to it. But they're mad because of taxes, right? And that's what kind of formed, like they already had their own ideology, but that's what kind of made it stronger, because of the taxes.
I would like to go back on what you said about how they needed money to fight, but their will to fight is what led them to start the American Revolutionary War, not the need for money. If they had the money or not, they still would have ended up fighting with whatever they had because the tension was so high and so built up. So technically they needed the money, but their will to fight was really what started.
To add on what she said, again, they weren't used to this. Remember when the soldiers came in and slept in their beds and ate their food? They were not used to it because they spent all their money just to have a living there. They slept in their beds, they ate the food, they even did their laundry for them. They were slaves too. to the soldiers. They did everything for him.
Now we're talking about money, right? If it was all about money, I want to mention opportunity cost. If it really was about money, they wouldn't have gone to war to the beginning. They had so much to lose. They had so much freedom, so much advantages. They had a lot to lose. Their businesses, all of that stuff. But why did they go to war? Because they firmly believed that they needed to protect the freedom and the right that they had. And if it was about money, they wouldn't have gone with the war. They wouldn't have spent all that.
So I like to think this, right? So first the economy, and then ideological principles. Like economy, like let's say you're losing money on a certain project that you want to do for fun, right? So let's say you lost your money. That's a part of the economy, right? So you lose your money and you can't do the fun anymore, right? That's the ideological principle. So like what you said, they required money. I mean, it's their will to fight, right? Mostly. But if they didn't have money, their will to fight would completely be destroyed because they wouldn't have anyone to fight for them or anyone to fight with them either.
I would like to add on to that because without the money, they wouldn't have the right equipment to fight. They wouldn't have the right clothes. They wouldn't have the right weapons, and they won't have enough soldiers.
So I kind of want to backtrack on what you said about the French and Indian Revolution. Pretty much that's where ideology started. After the French and Indian War, Great Britain issued the Proclamation of 1763 that prevented the colonists from moving to the other side of the Ohio River. They had these ideals of expansion, expanding their colonies, expanding their communities, expanding their lives. But why could they not? Because the crown didn't want them to. That's where the American Revolution started. It doesn't start with economic grievances.
I would like to add on to what you said when you said the colonists were mad about the taxes. They weren't mad about the taxes. They were mad about the taxes without representation in office. So they were mad that they had to pay something that they had.
Guys, give him a hand. Come on, nice and loud. Really well done, everyone. Really well done. I'm very proud of all of you. Guys, great job. So, go ahead, return to your seats in the audience, and we'll go ahead. Yep, I'll take that. Thank you so much, miss. Guys, go ahead and have a seat. Congratulations, well done. Give them another hand. Let's go. Fabulous, fabulous crowd. Beautiful people. All right, here we go. Guys, last debate coming up. Who's pumped? Y'all did this one, so you know the question coming. You know that question coming. Guys, the last debate, this is going to be for the high school level debates. Should the United States of America leave NATO? The North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Spicy, spicy, spicy question. So here we go. For LHS, give them a round of applause. I need Aaron Gonzalez, Brandon Rodriguez, Ivory Gregorio, and Daphne Smallwood. Come on up, guys. For Clewiston, I need Francisco Guerra, Christian Dixon, Cody Linder, and Destiny Garcia. Come on up, guys. Guys, give them a hand. They traveled a long way here to do battle with our champions. This will be fantastic. All right, guys. LaBelle, please. To my right, take your seats. Clewiston, please. To my left, take your seats. Once again, the question, should the United States leave NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization? In favor of leaving NATO will be LaBelle High School. Give them a round of applause. There we go. In favor of remaining in NATO shall be Clewiston. Give them a hand, guys. You're a great crowd, fantastic audience. All right, guys, you know the drill. 20 minutes, no notes, no standing. Don't forget that golden rule. One moment. Reset. All right. Sir. All right, guys, on your marks, get set, go.
Okay, hello, I'm Francisco Guerra, and today we're going to be talking about whether or not the United States should stay in NATO. I believe that the United States should stay in NATO because of its political advantages, the fact that they founded it, and that the defense that NATO gives to the United States and the rest of the world.
Anybody telling me any political advantages of NATO?
So the political advantages of NATO is that with NATO, they can make sure that Europe is democratic and doesn't have any tyrannical government, for example, like Russia currently.
Well, you mentioned a tyrannical government in Russia, but Russia is not really as big as a threat as they're perceived to be. The Russian economy currently is in shambles after the war in Ukraine. Before the war in Ukraine, it took 30 Russian rubles, which is their currency, to equal $1. Now it takes 110. The currency of Russia has nearly went down by 4 times it used to be. And especially militarily, the fumble in Ukraine is outrageous. This war is supposed to end in a week, and they have only controlled, to this day, 20% of their territory. So evidently, Russia is not the threat that they're perceived to be, both militarily and economically.
So you have a good point there, but I disagree. Russia is still a threat militarily. Currently in Ukraine, they're currently making multiple advances into their territory and beating back our army. Now, if the U.S. stayed in NATO, they'll still be able to deter Russia from going past Ukraine than more they have.
You're right. We can. We can still, even with leaving NATO, we can still hold our own against Russia. And going back to your point, yes, the U.S. founded it without having the Cold War would be needed. Right now, it's unneeded, and all it is a financial burden for our country, and we are losing money spending it on NATO when really we don't need it.
So I disagree there. We do need NATO for the simple reason. To be isolationist, the U.S. would not have to worry about Europe. So if the U.S. leaves NATO, that means Europe is on its own against Russia. Now, mind you, the U.S. provides the majority of the economic and military power in NATO. If the U.S. was to leave, you'll leave a military unready, economically weakened NATO to Russia. Mind you, Russia is still producing at a massive rate 1,000 artillery shells, military vehicles every year.
Adding on to what Christian said, Russia alone made around 2.1 million artillery shells in 2022. And also, it's detriment to Ukraine because if Russia gets Ukraine, then it's going to have geographical advantage against NATO and most of Western Europe because of the mountain range on the west side of Ukraine, plus the docks near the Caspian Sea.
Well, the presence of NATO is so close to Russia that Russia is actually, based off that, threatening to go into Poland, threatening to go into the Baltic area of states, which is Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. That NATO alliance is proven to be more of a threat than it's supposed to be a protection, because Russia is using that, especially the Russian spy chief, he's using that as an excuse to try and justify a further invasion of that area of land in Eastern Europe.
To add on what he said, Russia has stated if we protect Ukraine and its borders, they will attack NATO. So why would we stay in NATO to just get even more war that we don't need and that we can't, we can't afford more than we're already in debt?
So basically, I agree with you there that Russia does see NATO as a threat. The problem with that is NATO is a defensive alliance. It is not an offensive alliance. It will not attack Russia unless attacked first. So Russia paranoia is just from fear of past invasions that have had in the past from Western alliances.
Because it is a defense treaty, the U.S. could get dragged into wars and conflicts that we right now do not want to get into. So Article 5 has it that if one of our allies gets into a conflict with another country, we have to go help if they ask for it. And right now, the U.S. is not wanting to go into any conflict. We don't have the resources or the time to invest into it, and it would just be a waste of our time when we need to focus on our country and the economic state of it.
Now, since you're bringing up economics, I want to point out one thing. Ukraine is known for its massive amounts of raw material and grain. If we were to have NATO stay and Ukraine join that, which would be a benefit, we would get more nuclear material, raw materials, and grain, which would better help at home, lowering bread prices and helping us further.
But that could still drag us into a war with Russia. Not to mention, U.S. is currently funding the bulk of Ukraine's resources right now to help them, or to assist them with their conflict with Russia, but they're trying not to get into it. They are funding most of it since NATO is the one funding it, and guess what's funding most of it? The U.S. Right now, we're supposed to be funding, all the countries part of NATO are only supposed to put in 2% of their GDP into it, and we're putting like 3% more than the supposed amount. Europe is slacking in their payments when they can and should support NATO and put more money into it. We are struggling in healthcare. Our debt is it's in the negatives. We have so much we need to pay off, and we need to start focusing on that instead of all the other conflicts happening across the ocean.
So you make a good point there, but going back to war, we can deter Russia from having a war. For example, imagine Ukraine joined NATO. That's a forefront point of war that Russia would have to deal with, further deterring it from even invading NATO in the first place.
May I add on top of that? NATO's eastward expansion is what provoked Russia to become an aggressor in the first place. In 1990, there was only 17 countries, and to current day now there's 30. The United States has added way too many, and NATO is simply too large.
So, to bring your point there, NATO did not provoke Russia into invading Ukraine. Years prior, after an agreement that Ukraine made with Russia that made it give up its nuclear weapons, Russia invaded Georgia. Mind you, Georgia was not part of NATO, neither would it have been a threat even if it did join NATO. But Russia still invaded. That proves that Russia is just an aggressor and that NATO is no threat to it. It's just using that as an excuse to find more resources and gain more territory in the result.
But if we leave NATO, we're so close to Russia that what's the point of attacking? We're going to see it from a mile away. There's like no point in them attacking us because before anything happens, we will be able to see it, so we will be able to attack back before it even like hits us.
You make a good point there, but even then, Russia still views the U.S. as a geopolitical rival. So even if they did leave NATO, Russia would still have his eye on Russia.
Another claim is that President Donald Trump is trying to get us out of NATO and is trying to create the Golden Dome for us, which is not going to be developed at the time when he is in the United States for the next 3 to 4 years. And it's not as strong as Israel's Iron Dome.
What I really want to go to is his point earlier, which he talked about Ukraine's raw materials. President Trump tried to make a deal to get Ukraine's raw materials, and Zelensky wound up leaving the White House without signing the deal. So it seems that Ukraine does not really have a want to have an alliance with us in terms of getting the raw materials. And also, I mean, Ukraine, they are not a NATO nation. We should not be, compelled to even protect them. If Ukraine joins NATO, all that is going to cause is more problems. That's going to cause, really, what Putin said was that if United States forces go into Ukraine and fight for Ukraine, that would be a declaration of war, and that is something that we do not want.
May I add on top of that the NATO is a corpse of the group that it used to be. So many national interest clashes between what he said, between America and trying to make a deal for the raw materials. There's too much clash between national interests and old political structures.
Okay, so focusing on what he said, when he said Putin that U.S. forces in Ukraine would be a declaration of war, U.S. forces don't have to be in Ukraine. Ukraine currently, with just U.S. weapons and NATO support, is holding its own against Russia for the past 3 years. Even then, if Ukraine joined NATO, it would be a valuable thing for combat experience since it's fighting a modern war against Russia for the past 3 years.
Resources. Yes, Ukraine has resources, but at what cost? If they have resources, we're just putting our people on the line. Are
like more valuable than our citizens, and like why would we put our citizens on the line to get resources that we can get somewhere else or somewhere that we don't have to fight a war?
So you make an excellent point there, but U.S. citizens are not on the line, even if Ukraine did join NATO. NATO's mostly just to itself, and you have Ukraine just holding its own. If Ukraine was to join NATO, they could easily just ship the stuff through the Black Sea, which we would have more control over since the majority of the Black Sea is unpatrolled. And with Ukrainian patrol boats, we'll be able to have more access and more civilians over the Black Sea and over Ukrainian airspace, which is basically unclaimed other than by Ukraine itself.
The U.S. citizens aren't on the line physically, but their bank accounts are. Our taxpayers are the ones putting forth all the money. Our GDP, our gross domestic product, all that stuff is going into funding for NATO. Europe right now is sitting pretty. They can have paid vacations. Most of their healthcare paid off because of their health insurance is really good. But that's because it's depending on the U.S. that it just the U.S. will. They think that the U.S. will pick up its slack. And we can't do that anymore. Europe has the resources, the people, to defend themselves against Russia and the allies. We cannot keep funding NATO. We are risking too much staying in NATO when we can just leave and and we could focus on ourselves. Making our country great again. Right now, it's not that good.
I'm gonna add on to what you said, because if we leave, it's gonna be a Europe-run NATO, and if we leave, the chances of them disbanding NATO is very high. And so when we leave, we already have other allies that we know that can help us, and that we know that will support us in more than Europe can, and we have another chance of a war happening with a different country. So why would we focus on Russia when Russia said they won't attack us if we don't help this country?
Okay, I see your point, but NATO has the third most conflicts because there's only been like around 4 major conflicts since the founding of NATO. NATO is a peacekeeping organization. It's helping maintain world peace. Also, the NATO defenses, did you know that Russia sent a nuclear missile around the 2000s to Cuba? So that's a direct defense risk to us. And if Russia actually ended up sending that missile, then we could have ended up in a full-blown nuclear war, like way before 2020s.
Okay, realistically, peace will never happen because like in World War II, Germany had a non-aggression pact, right? And they still attacked them, so therefore peace is never going to happen. There's still going to be someone betraying the U.S. or someone like going against the U.S., so peace is never going to happen. So if NATO's a peace founding, why do we already have 4 wars in it? Why do we already have all these wars that's happening if it's supposed to bring peace? And it's not bringing us peace, it's bringing us more dead, and it's bringing our civilians getting killed.
So you make an excellent point, but the thing is that NATO is just a defensive alliance for Europeans against Russian and former Soviet threats. Their mission is just to keep peace in Europe. And so far they've done that. The only time they actually went into conflict outside of Europe was after the 9/11 attack, where they focused on the war on terror. That's the only time our Article 5 was actually activated.
I agree with part of what you said there. But I want to go back to a point that you made your previous 3 times speaking about the possibility of Ukraine joining NATO. Do you think Ukraine should join NATO?
Yes, I do.
Either side of staying or leaving NATO, it should be a consensus fact that Ukraine should not join NATO. Because if Ukraine joins NATO, that's only going to create future conflicts and a larger conflict now. Because then if Russia is attacking Ukraine, Article 5 would have to be invoked. And that would send us into a global war that the United States should just not be a part of, especially because it's so long ways away. And that Russia is not even the United States' biggest threat, it's China.
So you make an excellent point there, but the thing is that Europe, all European nations and NATO and the EU are major economic partners to the US. If we were to leave NATO, then that would leave Europeans to face the Russian army. Mind you, the majority of the military, industrial, and economic problem comes from the US itself.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to what Aaron said. The U.S. cannot last long in a fight against Russia because right now our recruitment counts are very low. We're having a hard time recruiting soldiers and getting people to join the army. If we were to get into a war because we are dragging to war because of NATO, we won't be able to support ourselves, and we might not even be a superpower anymore. So why should we just waste our time on that when we can lead and focus on ourselves? Like I said, it's really important that we do that because we need to support our army, whose recruitment is so low. The Air Force is the smallest it's ever been. The Navy doesn't even have that many people joining, and we need to start setting our sights on that. And China is our biggest enemy right now. We can't focus on Russia, and Ukraine would just drag us into that.
So you make a good point. The thing is that if Ukraine joins NATO, it's a major deterrent. The only reason that Russia and the Soviet Union in the past has not attacked is because of simple fact. If they were attacked, they would fight all of NATO. That's the only reason that Russia has yet to face or even fight NATO. And mind you, if Ukraine joins, that'd be a bigger strategic advantage, since in Russia, there's a major gap between the seaports and Volgograd, and if we were to have Ukraine there, we would threaten that strategic provinces and river, and therefore we'll be able to threaten to cut off that part of Russia, therefore threatening its economy and weakening it further, and deterring it from attacks further.
I will say, if Ukraine joins, all they have is, they don't really have military strength that will help us. So, because we're putting almost a lot of our, military strength into Ukraine to help fight them, to fight Russia. So, what's the point of having Ukraine join when we're helping them most of the time and they don't help us most of the time? Does that make sense?
You say that Ukraine doesn't have the military strength, but there is a few things that they do have. They do have patrol ships in the Black Sea, which no one in Ukraine has currently. And there is a airspace gap between Poland and Turkey that's been there for over 72 years that no one in NATO has access to anything that goes on there.
I want to go back to what you said earlier about Ukraine's strategic advantages. What possible strategic advantages could there be? Could there still be political instability within that country with conflict between Russia?
There is the mountains on the west of Ukraine that provide a natural border from the nations of NATO and Russia. But also, like Cody said, there's an airspace that hasn't been claimed by any nations in NATO, which could lead to more defense. Because in that airspace and next to it, there is a plains that's a key critical point in defense of Russia. So if Ukraine were to join NATO, then we could help Ukraine get and end this war more quickly than if we let this war carry on by leaving Ukraine by itself.
I would just like to say, this idea floating around of Ukraine joining NATO, the cons just outweigh the pros. Because if Ukraine joins, Ukraine is not even ready to join NATO. I mean, they spend about half their GDP on their defense. They're almost a broke nation. And militarily, I mean, without help of the United States and European nations, this war would have been ended in a week. Ukraine on their own does not have enough contributions to even significantly improve NATO. They would just be another nation that's going to cause problems if they're attacked, which is most likely they will again.
If we say we do help Ukraine and Ukraine joins NATO, if we go to a war with Russia, are we sure Europe's going to help? Are we sure they're going to send enough people?
for say Afghanistan, right? We sent almost all of our people to go get
That's
killed.
right. Give him a hand, guys. Come on, nice and loud, nice and loud. Let him hear it, let him hear it. Great job, guys. Well done, everyone. So, everybody, thank you again to all of the debaters, guys. Give them another round of applause, especially the middle school guys. Well done. So, guys, now comes the hard part. Audience, sit tight for a minute. The judges are going to do the judging. Folks, I do not envy your duty. So guys, sit tight for a little bit. Judges are going to do their thing, and then we will have ourselves some winners and some closing comments from our luminaries.
All right, folks, while we have our judges tally the scores, I will just share with you how the scores are going to be awarded. So for each, listen up. So we had 3 roundtable debates. For each roundtable debate, there will be 1 champion chosen. So we'll have a total of 3 champions. Out of those 3 champions, the person with the highest score will be crowned the district champion, and they will also receive a plaque to be the district champion. All right? We also had 6 teams. We had 6 different teams. Each team had 4 people per team. The team that did the most outstanding job will also be awarded a team trophy to take back to their respective schools as well. But before we do all of that, I'd like to call all the 24 finalists up here to the stage. All 24 finalists up here to the stage. All right, everybody come up here. Come up here. Come up here. The time has come. One more applause for this great group of scholars. All right, our middle school world history debate champion. This was our first roundtable debate. Goes to Carlos Gomez. Carlos. Let's get a picture of Mr. Stand up, Mr. Fishback. All right, folks, our middle school American history debate. This was our second roundtable debate. The championship award goes to Angela de Santiago. All right, congratulations, Angela and Carlos. All right, our third roundtable debate winner. This was our high school world history debate on NATO. And this award goes to Aaron Gonzalez. If I could have Angela and Carlos come up here, and Aaron come back, all three of you right here. All right, folks. So one of our three winners here will be given the crown of the 2025 Hendry County Incubate Debate District Debate Showdown Champion. They'll also be getting a plaque. A beautiful plaque. And that district champion is none other than Mr. Aaron Gonzalez. We also want to acknowledge the contributions of our educators because they put in a lot of effort to prepare. So we also have a plaque for the teacher of the district champion, and that is your very own LaBelle High School's Coach K. Coach K. All right, folks, while we also have a medal. We have a medal for all our, listen up. Right now, Mr. Swindle and Mr. Fishback are going around and they're putting a medal on all our other finalists. So give it up for all our other finalists, folks. They did a wonderful job as well. As soon as we wrap up, we have one last award to give, and that'll be the team championship. As soon as we wrap up, parents are welcome to take pictures with your students, hang out for pictures and all that. We look forward. Let's give it up for our parents, folks, who came out here today and supported their students. Give it up for our parents. Thank you, parents, for being here. All right, our last award of this morning goes to the team. And the award for the district team championship for this year's 2025 Incubate HCSD goes to the team from LaBelle High School. All four of you, come up here. All four. And if I can get Mr. Swindle here and Mr. Give it up, folks, one more time for all our debate contestants up here. What a wonderful job. We thank you so much for your participation today, and we look forward to again doing it again next year. Thank you.